Welcome to the Boone Podcast. I'm Bret Boone, and today on the program, I sit down with an all-star and a World Series champion.
I sacrificed a lot to come to New York. I wanted to be a part of something special.
What have your impressions been watching Ohtani over the last few years?
What he's done is unbelievable.
We got a taste. We understood what the playoffs were like.
That city made me a better player, a better person.
Roy Halladay is my guy, man. He was tough.
Welcome to the Bret Boone Podcast. I am Bret Boone. Today, it seems like we've had a lot lately. Another friend of the podcast. I've known Tony for a lot of years. Looking forward to see how you see the 2025 Padres season along with the rest of the NL West. Ladies and gentlemen, Padres broadcaster Tony Gwynn Jr. T, thanks for coming on the program.
Booney, thank you for having me. And how you doing, man?
I'm doing all right. Weather's nice today here in Southern California, San Diego. Padres.
Yeah.
A lot of expectations. They've had a lot of expectations the last few years. And I don't know about you watching that series last year, the postseason with the Dodgers. I mean, they had handled the Dodgers pretty good during the regular season. And in that series, until game 4, I thought the Padres were the better team. Obviously, the rest is history. After game 4, they won, and Dodgers picked up some momentum, ended up winning the World Series. But expectations for 2025?
Expectations are as high as they've ever been. I think that within the team, this is a group that feels like they have some unfinished business out there. I think those are the exact words Manny Machado used at the beginning of camp. So this is a confident bunch and a group that I think realizes from an offensive standpoint, they just need to try to build on what they kind of started last season. And I think that's the way that they're kind of forging forward.
You know, I looked at this team. I've really, living here, you know, I keep a special eye on the Padres. And, you know, from my time, I played 1 year here, 2000, and we were over at old Jack Murphy. It was a different atmosphere, different being a Padre in 2000 than it is present day. This city, in the last 3, 4, 5 years, what I noticed, I mean, it's kind of Padre fever now, and it's really a cool atmosphere. I've got, you know, casual fans, people that don't really watch baseball, they're walking around San Diego with Padres jerseys.
Yeah.
You know, that's all came recently in the last few years. You have Dylan Cease and Michael King, who I thought in that Soto trade a couple years ago was going to be a huge piece. He went from the bullpen to starting rotation. I think we're starting to see that. I think he's going to get better this year. But this Padres group, with Machado and Tatis, they added a rise. They signed the big deal with Bogarts, and we'll get to that a little bit. He's got to start living up to that star that they expected they were getting from Boston. But are there anything you think there's any lessons learned from a year ago? Because I like you probably were watching that series. I thought they had in the bag. I remember friends calling me. I said, I think this San Diego Padre team can win the World Series this year.
Yeah.
And that obviously what happened.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, there's always some lessons that you learn in losing, and especially in the way that they lost. But I don't know that there's any one particular lesson. I think they got to that point in the series, and as you said, you saw what everybody else was seeing, that the Padres were dominating that series, and for whatever reason, they lost their way offensively. You got to give some of the credit to the Dodgers. I mean, they pitched their tail off when they needed to most. There may have been a little bit of pressing, trying to get it done, that led to the, you know, however many innings, 20 plus innings of scoreless baseball from them. So I think those are, you put that in a pocket. I mean, that's 2 games. You put that over a course of a season, that's going to happen from time to time. It just happened at the worst possible moment. I don't know that they did anything wrong per se. They did not have Joe Musgrove, you know, at that point. They lost him. That was a big part of it. They had to kind of, Dylan Cease had to go on short rest. It kind of moved up everybody. So no, I think staying healthy and sticking with the program, I think it is the lesson learned in that brief, 20 plus innings of scoreless baseball for them.
I'll tell you, and the way the Dodgers did it a year ago, I didn't think they could do it. I mean, they basically did it with a bullpen. They basically had bullpen games every day through the World Series. I don't think we've seen that in modern times. Usually, the horses, the best starting rotation, usually in the end prevails. But a year ago, the Dodgers proved that kind of a new wave of baseball where there's some bullpen activity, you can win that way too.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like, that has not been necessarily a recipe for success come playoff time in the past. And they got hot. They got hot at the right time. The pitching got hot at the right time. And they rode that the rest of the way, all the way to a World Series.
I remember a couple years ago, and I think they asked Dave Roberts, as they do, the press runs out of questions sometimes, and they're looking for questions. But I remember, I remember they were saying, now being a part of the press, the Dodgers and the Padres, it's a big rivalry. David Roberts kind of poo-pooed it. No, our rival is the San Francisco Giants. Well, what I've seen the last few years, that's kind of changing. When I was a Padre, you were born and raised here. You were a Padre yourself. I didn't feel that rivalry in my short, brief stint in a Padres uniform with the Dodgers that I see now. It's kind of like it's a blood sport, and it's really, from a player's perspective, when you have that going on in the fan base, I think it's really cool. People fighting in the stands. It's passion. It's it's a big venue. You're somewhere special.
It's good for the game to have a rivalry, especially when you consider, kind of the Yankee Red Sox has kind of died down over time.
Simmered down a little bit, yeah.
It's given Major League Baseball a more of a heated kind of deal, and I think a couple of things. I think Dave Roberts has had to revise that later on. Last year. He changed it in terms of how that rivalry has kind of taken place, but I think when you and I were playing for an organization, it was one-sided, meaning Padre fans felt that the Dodgers were their rival. The Dodgers did not, however, feel that the Padres were their rival. And so that part has now changed. I think both fan bases realize that we're each other's biggest threat. And so, therefore, you got a little bit more of a heated rivalry.
Yeah, it was kind of the little brother, big brother. Like, come on, your older brother, let me tag along with the big boys, And the Dodgers, no, they're kind of keeping them off. Now they got to take Padres serious. Off-season Dodgers, unbelievable. I was dumbfounded. I mean, every move they made, I just thought, really, is this a real world? They found they've obviously found a loophole. And whether it's good for baseball or not, it depends on who I ask. But nevertheless, they're not doing anything illegal. I mean, I kind of got to tip my cap, like, wow, this was a real unique way to go about it with all the deferments. But it just seemed like they just kept an already great team, an all-star caliber team, just kept getting better with the additions of the Snell. You already had a Glass, now you bring over, and then on top of it, they get the Sasaki kid coming over from Japan, who, from what I hear, sky's the limit. When I've seen his videos, to me, kind of looks like a DeGrom. He's just long and just electric.
It's a great comp.
It's going to be interesting how that pans out to go along with the Yamamoto, and I'm kind of beating a dead horse, but I was talking to Ruben Amaro Jr., and I was talking about the depth that this Dodgers team, especially the starting rotation, you're bringing a Kershaw back. Kershaw, one of the greatest pitchers of all time, definitely one of the greatest left-handed pitchers of all time. He's 37. He's getting on. He's not in his prime anymore. But when he gets back healthy and able to pitch in a big league game, if this Dodger rotation is healthy, Clayton Kershaw is like the seventh starter. If Kershaw is your seventh starter, even at his age, that's unbelievable.
The beauty of that depth, Booney, is that Kershaw can kind of pick his spots. He's had trouble getting through an entire season for the last, 3 or 4. With this kind of depth, you can kind of slow play him and allow him to kind of gauge it so that he's at his best come end of the year. Because that's my guess, knowing Kirsch, that's what he really wants to be available and throwing his best is come postseason time. And so when you have 6, 7, 8 starters and he's the seventh, that affords you an ability to kind of, move around his starts and have him, set him up for success, basically. Listen, the thing that the Dodgers did this year, and you got to give them credit, right? They've created an environment where guys are willing to defer. That's not something that all players, as you know, are willing to do. But they've created an environment where I don't know if guys feel obligated or they just want to kind of fit in. But this is I think an unheard of amount of guys on one team that have been willing to defer. So, I mean, there's a credit that has to be given to them in terms of they've created an environment that guys want to come to and want to play for. And so on the Padres side of that, though, that's not their concern. They have to go out and with the lineup they have, you could match those names up pretty much against anybody, any other lineup in the league and feel pretty good. And if everybody plays to their potential, they're going to be right there in the mix when it's all said and
done. You mentioned Musgrove's going to be out. Diamondbacks have improved their ball club. I think the
Wild West.
It's going to be tough. The Diamondbacks have gotten better. It's going to be interesting how the Giants under a new Buster Posey look, how they play. I think the Giants always have kind of a built-in home field advantage just playing in the Bay Area.
For sure.
As a player, I don't know about you, but I just didn't like going to San Fran. And now before your time, I played at me and your dad played at Candlestick, and you talk about really hating it. But for some reason, that atmosphere, that it's winter in the summertime, guys don't like going there. So I think San Fran always has a built-in. It'll be interesting.
I agree.
But it's more for me, it's the Padres, it's the Diamondbacks, and it's obviously the Dodgers. But let's get into the Padres a little bit. What you're seeing, you lose a guy that had a pretty big year for him last year, kind of a breakout year in Profar. He's gone. He's over with the Braves. What are you seeing so far? You added Pivetta. I thought that was a late, sneaky, good move for the Padres, sneaking Pivetta in to add that to that rotation. You lost Tanner Scott to the Dodgers. That's going to be a big loss, but you still got that Adam, who's unbelievable. And Suarez at the end, I think, is as good as anybody. Jason Hayward's joined the mix. Tell me what you think. Here's what I like, Tony, and then I'm gonna let you take the wheel.
Okay.
I've been saying for years, when they made the Bogaerts trade, or I'm sorry, signed Bogaerts as a free agent to the big deal, all of a sudden they're moving them around the infield. Now, I know shortstops have an ego. It's the toughest, and I'm not saying an ego in a bad way. Your shortstop is kind of the captain of the team. He is the most talented defender on the field at all time. Always has been, always will be.
Right.
And all of a sudden you sign him to this big deal, and you're going to play second. Well, I think Bogart said all the right things. Hey, whatever's best for the team. But I know deep down he's, wait a minute, I'm a shortstop. I'm a big fan of keeping my big guys and especially my stars happy on the field. Yeah. I don't think he was happy moving. So you got Bogaerts back. Also, I think the Cronenworth playing first, that's great. Cronenworth, any second baseman, go play first and do a good job. He's done a nice job. But I think Cronenworth's a really good second baseman. And I think when you put him at first, maybe his mindset is, oh, now I have to hit like a first baseman. The psyche changes a little bit, putting him back at second base where he's comfortable, where he knows he adds a lot of value defensively, I think puts him in a better frame of mind. Getting Bogaerts back at short, better, putting him in the best position to succeed. And I think that's the case there. All right, I'm done talking. I just like those because I've heard him talking about that's going to be the setup, and I liked it. Take it from there. Start with the rotation.
I'll start with the rotation. The Pivetta deal is going to turn out to be huge. It seems as though Darv is dealing with some elbow pain a little bit. I don't know if it's pain, just inflammation. And so, you're already going in without Musgrove. Prior to signing Pivetta, it was Darvish, King, Cease. And then you were going to have a mix of maybe Velasquez and Waldron. Well, you get Pavetta on a very creative deal. Credit to AJ for being able to kind of maneuver this. Now you have a pretty good not a pretty good, really good starting rotation with Pavetta as your 4. And I think right now the conversation around the 5th spot has been Vasquez, has been Waldron, and all of a sudden the Rule 5 pick from last year we saw a little bit at the big league level, Stephen Kolek, has pitched really well out of spring. And so it's been a really good competition in terms of who's going to win that spot. But with Darv, all of a sudden, having some inflammation, they're going to slow him down a little bit. I would think his first start of the season is in jeopardy, meaning those other 3 guys are now competing for maybe an early spot in the season. But I like the rotation. I think when it's healthy, it's going to be one of the better rotations in the National League. And so Darvish has looked good. King has looked really good here, especially his last start. They're all building up as you would want your starters to kind of look as they get closer and closer to season. It's been kind of textbook from that side. To your point, second, Crone moving back to second, Bogarts being at short, and Mike Shields saying these are going to be their positions this year. I don't know enough people give credence to what you were talking about, the psyche. And although both of those guys are pros, like they didn't have any issue with moving. Deep down that they probably are most comfortable where they are now. And
Right.
Typically at the big league level, when guys are comfortable, that's when you get the best out of them on both sides of the field. And so I think the Padres are going to be a very good offense once again. Luis Ariz hitting over 450 here in spring. He's going to lead things off. The interesting move that you're going to likely see this year, and I mean, that's not set in stone yet, but it's been most of spring, is Jackson Merrill, who was 8th last year. By the end of the year, he was hitting 5th. It's probably going to be in that 3 hole. And he's going to be sandwiched between Toddy and Machado batting cleanup. And so every challenge that the Padres have put to him, he has responded in the most positive way possible. And so here's his next challenge. I mean, it is a honor in some ways, and it is a big ask to be in that 3 spot. That is who, traditionally that has been your best hitter. Now sometimes these guys toggle between 2 and 3, but this is the guy that they're going to ask to carry the load or carry a big load. But I think you and I both know when this team is at its best, Manny Machado is the guy kind of leading the way. I think he has grown in so many ways in his leadership for this ball club. And this is the first time he's come into spring training 100% healthy. And so when you talk about health, Toddy, who hasn't been fully healthy in a full season in a while, and Manny Machado, who has in some ways been dealing with other things, whether it was a shoulder or ankle, they're both healthy. And these guys are the type of guys that can carry, a team from the beginning of the season all the way to the end. And that's why I don't worry that their offense is going to suffer at all. I mean, if Bogey, and you kind of mentioned this a little earlier, if Xander Bogaerts gets back to, the type of numbers we saw, when he signed this deal, this offense is probably going to be at its best. We haven't seen that offense with Xander clicking at the same time as the rest of these guys. So this is going to be a very formidable team. Obviously, the Dodgers, are loaded and they got a deep roster. But this team is in the same way that they went into last year, kind of underdogs after the Ohtani signing, and the Dodgers were able to bring some of those free agents. This team is going to compete. They like to compete, and I fully expect this to be a tight division this year.
Yeah, I think you're right with that offense, with the exception of probably the Dodgers. I mean, the Dodgers on paper, I don't care what anybody says, they're the best team in baseball. They just are.
Yeah.
It's just the talent. I've never seen a more talent. I've never seen a more talented roster. Now you got to go out and play the games. You got to stay
That's
healthy.
right.
But the problem with the Dodgers, they're deep too. So when their big boy goes down, they got another big boy to pick it up. You're right though. Tatis and Machado have the ability to be MVP candidates. You
Right.
talk about a rise. He might win his third batting title in a row.
Remember, he just won his last one with one thumb. He had a torn ligament in his thumb all last year, for most of the last season last year. Still won a batting title.
Yeah, and he's a throwback. He's kind of that.
Yes.
Hey, I hit for average, and that's huge at the top of that order. But you're right. I think Bogarts, if he gets to that all-star level performance, which I think he can, and especially being happy, clear mind, going back to shortstop, Cronenworth, if he can be, I think Cronenworth has the ability to be an all-star caliber player. Now, is he happy at second base? Can he get back to that all time? I think if everything goes good for these guys, like you said, I think they are one of the best offenses in baseball. It's going to be interesting to watch these guys. And I really like the end. I'll reiterate, I really like the end of that bullpen. I've always been a huge Suarez guy. And Adam coming over last year, what I saw out of him made me not want to get off my couch and grab it back. Tony. Not that I ever want to do that, but there's certain guys. That's how I gauge people. Ask me, what do you think of this pitcher? What do you think of that? And I always tell them it's the eye check. I'll sit there and I'll watch, on the couch. And if I don't want to get off the couch and grab a bat, which right now I wouldn't have a chance against most pitchers, but if I really don't want to get off the couch, that's the eye check that guy's good from what I see.
Yeah, no, like I'm the same way. It's a competitive thing. Like, I probably get in there and be able to stand in there against this cat.
You can compete. Yeah,
you can compete, right? But Adam is a different. It's just different. It does not look comfortable.
I don't want to
coming. No, it's okay. He's looked good. It's funny. I had a good conversation with him yesterday. I was talking to him because first 4 outings he had in spring training, it was very 1 2 3 1 2 3. So he wasn't really getting a ton of reps with guys on, and all of a sudden he started to struggle and he's kind of worked through some of the issues. It was the first time I've seen him since he's been a Padre have any issue at all. I mean, he was that good from the time he came over last year to the end of the season. He's going to slide with Scott gone now. He's going to slide into that setup role. And in some cases, I'm sure he's going to end up closing some games this year. I would bet, if Suarez has been ran out there too much. They have their bullpen is going to be very stout. You got Adrian Mortejon back. He's going to pitch some high leverage innings for the Padres. And listen, they have a couple young guys that we haven't seen, not to mention Estrada, who has been phenomenal all spring. So they got 4 good back end arms right now, and that's to say with 2 guys that haven't, and one guy, a young guy, in Reynolds. Big 6'8" kid, throws about 100. Saw him a little bit last year. They have bullpen arms. And so I think maybe people kind of thought would be a weakness with a guy like Tanner Scott leaving. All of a sudden you look up, you got Jason Adam, you got Robert Suarez, you got Adrian Mortejon, you got Estrada. This bullpen is going to be another top end type deal once again this year.
I know the player's perspective when you enter spring training. Expectations are always high. Everybody's going to win the World Series. And our mindset is always win our division. Give yourself a chance, get to the postseason. It's a different postseason setup now. A lot more teams get into the postseason in 2025. Modern history has shown that it's not necessarily the division winners or the guys that have the best year that go on to win the World Series. Being on the ground there and just being around today's guys quite a bit like you are, is it about winning the West for this Padres team, or is it about getting a seat at the table to go into the postseason?
I think it is about winning the West and just being on the ground here. They recognize the challenge, but they're taking it head on. I think this team believes, especially, and I can't emphasize last year's kind of climb enough. I think that is what leads to the belief that it doesn't matter what they have over there. We know if we go out and we play our game and we execute our game plan, we're going to have a chance to win every night. And I think they know that. They've seen that work kind of on their own last season. And so, yes, as we mentioned, the Dodgers have added a ton, but I don't think they are paying any attention to that. I think for them, they know it's about how they go out and how they play the game. They play a very I kind of consider it old school brand offensively. I mean, they play to the scoreboard. Whatever the scoreboard is telling them, that is what they're going to do. And it's really 1 through 9 that approach it that way. And I think they saw the fruits of that labor last year. And because of that, the belief is we go out, we do that again, we'll have a chance to win the West.
And I think the Padres too have a little bit. It's kind of a notch in their belt because it's pretty much the conclusion of everybody in baseball that the Dodgers are the best team. But the Padres do have that element of, wait a minute, yeah, they're the best team in baseball. Everybody knows that, but we have their number. We showed that a year ago. Now, they didn't finish the way they wanted to, but they handled the Dodgers all season last year in the regular season. They know that, and more importantly, the Dodgers know that.
Yes.
Yeah, and those Dodgers, 100%. They know how good they are. They got the trophy right now in LA, but they're looking down the freeway and they look at San Diego and go, yeah, San Diego's a good team, but man, they're tough when we play them. And that's, I know that they're feeling that way. And that's the most important thing. Not that the Padres know, but the Dodgers know.
Yeah, the Padres are supposed to. That they have to think that way. But the Dodgers, to your point, that's all they talked about after they won the World Series. When you listen to those guys talk about the most challenged that they were, the team that they thought had a chance to beat them was the Padres. And that was because over the course of the season, that's what was happening. The Padres were beating them at their best. They were beating them at their worst. But, as you said, when it mattered most, the Dodgers were able to get over the hump. But as you said, they're not the ones that are selling the Padres short, right? It's everybody else. They know the Padres can play. And so I think they'll continue to approach it that way.
All right, let's get into the division a little bit, and we'll go right to the Dodgers. We mentioned at the top Snell, Glasnow, Sasaki, Yamamoto, Ohtani, Gonsolin. I think he's been banged up a little bit. May, who's really the potential on this kid we've been talking about for years, but he just has that knack to get hurt. So it'll be interesting there. The Scott added to Trennan in the bullpen, and not only that, but they went out and got Kirby Yates, who was maybe the best reliever in all the game a year ago with the Brewers. Betts, Freeman, Ohtani, Muncy. I look at it like a Teoscar Hernandez, who hit 30 homers, right around 100 ribbies. He's like their 5th best player. That's how good they are. Their catcher, Will Smith, he's one of the best catchers in baseball. He'll hit like 6th or 7th in the lineup. So we know the Thunder where it is. Quick thoughts on Dodgers going in. How good are they? What has to happen for them to do what everybody thinks they're going to do, and that's run the table?
Honestly, out of all of those signings, the one that I think I guess would hurt the most, or I feel like has the ability to cause the most trouble, is the Blake Snell deal. I don't think, just understanding how being around these guys, none of those guys are causing their heart to skip a beat. But Blake Snell is a little bit different. There's just something about Blake, I think, having been their teammate for a little bit of while, them getting a chance to see how dominant he can be when he's going. I think in that rotation, I still think he's the best. He's the best of the group, in my opinion, when he's right. So I think, there isn't a whole lot to say about this team. Like it's the creme de la creme.
Buckle up. You got a 5-game series and you got Ohtani in the 5th game. That could
Exactly.
be
And so
that could be a scenario.
that could be a real thing. That could be a real thing. Yeah. So I mean, listen, the Dodgers are loaded. This will be a disappointing season if it ends up anything other than a World Series, and that's a lot of pressure. I don't know that there's been a team, maybe in the history of baseball, that has had the expectation that the Dodgers will have this season.
Yeah, I agree with that. Diamondbacks, the other team I talked about. I think I think the Diamondbacks have been good. Went to the World Series 2 years ago. Uh, I think they're a better team than that World Series team
I do
in
too.
23, especially with you got Corbin Burns. That's a big horse to put at the top of that rotation. You went out and you got Naylor from the Cleveland Guardians. Graveman added to that pen. You lost a few guys, but I just I look at that. I think Kelly Gallen, they're going to get better. They got a young nucleus. They seem to really like each other. Corbin Carroll had a down year, came on strong in the end, but him maybe having a fresh start from start to finish might help. Touch a little bit on the Diamondbacks. What do you expect out of them?
That's a fun team. That's a fun team to watch. They run. They all can run. They hit and run. They play the game in a similar way, I think, as the Padres. They just have more athletes. I think more team speed on that team. They're going to be better. I think this is the team that I think will be a thorn in everybody's side this year in that National League West. I mean, when you got a guy like Corbin Carroll at the top, Zach Gallen has been, when he's been healthy, he's been pretty much unhittable. Merrill Kelly has, I think, come on in the last year or so as a guy that can be dependable, eating innings. He's got to stay healthy. That's the thing that concerns me about them is their pitching depth. How much, if any of those guys get hurt, although they're better situated than they've been in the past with Corbin Burns at the top. What do they have that can come in and kind of keep things afloat? And I think that's the same on the offensive side. Any of those guys get hurt, it could be a little bit of an issue for them. They're going to need Naylor to fill some big shoes. I've been a big fan of Walker, since was traded to the Diamondbacks, just watching the consistency of him offensively and how good he is defensively. Those are big shoes that Naylor's going to have to fill. Now, he's had a good spring. Can he play at that level as consistent as Walker did? I think that's going to be a big one for him too. But this is a good team. They're healthy. They're a team that you gotta be reckoned with too.
Yeah, Eugenio Suarez at third base. I know the Mariners. My Mariners.
This is a walk. This is a walk year for him too. So
I'll tell you what, he just quietly goes about it. And every year you look up and it's 90 to 100 ribbies. It's 25 to 30 home runs. He's not being paid in today's standards a huge amount of money. I think he's making $10-11 million.
Yeah.
And you know what you're getting for him. He's a really good defender. Seems to me like guys gravitate to him. He's got that personality and that smile where he's a big pillar in that clubhouse.
We did a game the other day, and I actually heard that one of the guys that helped get him going was Perdomo. He suggested using the velocity machine, and that's when Suarez just took off, and it became a part of his routine. And that's another guy. I think it may not show up on the stat sheet, but when you talk to folks around that Diamondback organization, Gerardo Perdomo is a guy that has a voice in that locker room and kind of the energy of that team. And so they're a fun team to watch. I enjoy when the Pods get together with them because you get to see like baseball at its essence, right? It's not just, trying to hit the home or trying to get strike. You see two teams that play the game and play the scoreboard. You see some running. They're going to be a team that if they're healthy, you're going to have to deal with. And
it's going to be interesting to see too. Montgomery had that great run in 23 from the Yankees to the Cardinals to the Diamondbacks. Really had a rough year. He's fighting. I'm hearing some things. He's fighting to try to break into that rotation. That'll be interesting if he can make a comeback. All right, last one I'll get to is San Francisco. And you mentioned Snell. Snell, when he's on, you've seen it, but I've seen it too. When he's on and right and healthy, he's as good as it gets in all of baseball. Maybe with the exception of DeGrom, but DeGrom's been hurt so much it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But I look at a Blake Snell, and when he gets going, he doesn't give up any runs. So San Fran's going to be missing that. But Webb, they added Verlander. Who knows? They made that deal, and I thought, it's Verlander. Who knows? Maybe you catch lightning in a bottle. At worst, he's going to be a real good influence on the rest of that rotation. But you got Robbie Ray, who's really, ever since the Cy Young year, hasn't lived up to expectation. You got him, and Jordan Hicks came over from the St. Louis Cardinals. He's in that rotation. They made the big offseason acquisition of Adames from the Brewers. You still got Chapman Lee, the kid from Korea a year ago that got hurt, missed the whole season. He'll be back in action. But I look at this division. I'll never count San Francisco out. I never will, just because of what we talked. Something about San Francisco gives you a little bit of an edge. But if I really have to break down this division, I can't say they're going to be a factor. What do you think?
I think that this is a dark horse team. Their staff is sneaky good. I know he didn't end up staying in the rotation. But when we saw Jordan Hicks the couple times we saw him, he was electric. And he got off to a really good start at the beginning of the season. Now, remember, he was just kind of making his transition from, being a bullpen guy. I know he started in the minor leagues, but it's one thing to start in the minor leagues and then go to the bullpen. He finally, I think they're stretching him out to be a starter. I think you got to be interested to see, what does Ver have left? If he has anything left, how much, and the other thing is, how much of a factor can he be on some of those younger guys? He's a wealth of knowledge. You've seen guys throughout my career get better just by being around somebody like Verlander. So can some of these guys pick up, some of the things that he's been able to kind of accumulate over time? You mentioned Webb. They got the other Webb version of Root, who I think is a good starter as well. Offensively, I like Lee, man. He grew on me over the year. I know he missed, the second half of the season, but watched him in the spring. He can hit. He's got a little juice too. He's got more juice than you think he does. Chapman is Chapman. I love watching him play. I think he's going to be a great piece. I love the Adames move. Finally landing a big free agent. Remember, Giants had swung and missed a couple of those big years when you had the Judges on the market. They had the whole kerfuffle with Correa when he lost his deal there. They finally got a guy. And Adames has proven in his stint in Milwaukee that maybe it was just him being in Tampa that was not allowing him to grow, because he's just gotten better and better every year. I don't know that they have enough offense ultimately in this division. But I do think they're going to pitch. I don't know. Their bullpen is still very wishy-washy. I don't know that they have the consistency that you need there, or they haven't shown that. But I think in terms of starters, I think they're gonna be all right in that category, assuming those guys are healthy and stay in the rotation.
All right, one more and I'll let you go. This Padres team that we've been watching the last 2 or 3 years, how big's their window? The Tatis, Machado, now King, Cease, Suarez, Adam, Cronenworth. What's the window for this ball club to win? How much time do we have left?
I would say I think they got about a 3-year window, depending on how some of this stuff shakes out. King's a free agent after this year. Arise is a free agent after this year. And so, some of these pieces are going to be, may come off the board, they base down the, but your core, you got Jackson for a while. You got Toddy for a while. You got Manny for a while. You got Bogey for a while. Particularly the last two. Manny is, you're going to look up here shortly. I mean, he's going to have 2,000 hits when this season's done. He's going to have 350 homers when this season's done. There's a lot for him to play for.
Hall of Fame pace. Hall of Fame pace.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you know, you got your core lined up for, lots of years. How productive can they be, especially the guy Bogarts and Manny on the back end versus Toddy on the front end, Jackson on the front end? I think they have the right mix. But in terms of what they have right now, I'd say it's 3. But that could be expanded depending on, what happens in those 4 guys that I just named in terms of that core.
And I keep getting reminded, and I'm a huge fan of his. I just forget because he's so young and he's so new to the program. But I've got to start incorporating Jackson Merrill when I talk about the Padres. It's always
Yeah.
Tatis and Machado. This Merrill kid, he's a freak. And when I
Boone,
say
let me
freak,
tell you,
I mean in a good way. I don't give him enough love. I forget. It just slips my mind. But man, he's a good player. And when players do it at that tender age, I'm always off the charts impressed.
you would love him too, man. He is a baseball nut. Like, he doesn't talk in terms of what I can do. Every time he speaks, it's about what he can bring to the team and how he's going to help the team. And you know how it is when you're young. You want to come in, you want to establish yourself, and you want to make a name for yourself. He's just cut from a different cloth, man. He just loves the game of baseball. He's a fun kid to be around.
Very cool. Well, Tony Gwynn Jr., I appreciate it, man, taking the time out today. For those of you now watching the Bret Boone podcast, we have our own YouTube channel. Check it out. For those of you listening, download the podcast wherever you download your podcast or on the Odyssey app. And until next time, keep it here.